Apparently it is the season for new box sets because I've gotten a lot of them at my door lately. I've gotten the new Pathfinder Game Night box set, the D&D Stranger Things Hellfire Club box set, and this one, the new D&D Starter Set. I am on record saying that the original 5e starter set is probably the best thing that we got out of 5e. The adventure in that set, The Lost Mine of Phandelver, is to me an almost perfect starter adventure, and I would know because it was my very first adventure as a game master, so this set has a lot to live up to. And if we are judging on weight alone, this would win top marks. There is so much in here. And if you want some extra fun items and enemies for your adventures, don't forget that we make our own for both Pathfinder and D&D. You can find them at bonfirebites.com, and they're completely free. So let's see if the quality here matches the quantity. With thanks to Wizards of the Coast for sending it my way, let's check out the new Dungeons & Dragons starter set, Heroes of the Borderlands. Enhance and improve your 5e games today with Hit Point Press. Black Friday brings some massive discounts on products I adore. Get bundles of animated spell cards, plus animated conditions, townsfolk, and more for between 35 and 50% off. The Fablemaker's Tarot deck and Deck of Many Things are both 25% off. My beloved Humblewood campaign setting and adventure is 33% off, and the Humblewood mini packs are 39% off. Plus, Fool's Gold, dice, plushies, Griffin saddlebag, Ethera, and more are on sale now for Black Friday. Go check it out now using our link in the corner or down below. There is a lot here, so I want to keep things quick and organized. Use that timeline below me if you want to jump around. Big picture, this set is designed around the new 2024 rules and is based on Keep on the Borderlands, a module that was published 1 month after I was born. This set is primarily designed to be approachable and easy to get into with lots of cards and tokens and maps and handouts. So let's start off by looking at the components. Here is everything in the box. You have several booklets, loads of reference cards for equipment, magic items, spells, NPCs and monsters, player mats, lots of tokens, hero standees, a whole bunch of maps, a combat tracker, and a lot more, so let's dive in. There are 4 booklets. The Player's Guide goes over how to play D&D, and specifically how to play D&D with the components in this box, which kind of merge the D&D experience with a traditional board game with lots of cards and tokens. The rules are all standard 2024 D&D for the most part, but the stat tracking and whatnot uses cards and tokens instead of pencil and paper. The intention here is to be able to play without having to write hardly anything down. We'll talk more about that soon. The rules booklet is pretty good. It's surprisingly comprehensive, it's well written, it's nicely organized, pretty easy to understand. To me, the best part is the rules glossary at the end, where you can look up concepts in the moment when you need them. There are entries for everything from advantage to armor class, to cantrips, to climbing, to dim light and grappling and loading ammunition, so on and so forth. Absolutely fantastic resource for your first few months playing the game, and even after that, because there are a few things in here that I am still constantly looking up. Playing multiple versions of multiple games makes everything more difficult. The adventure is broken down into 3 setting books: the Keep on the Borderlands, the Cave of Chaos, and the Wilderlands. Each book is fully illustrated and printed on nice glossy paper stock. We'll talk more about the adventure itself a little bit later. But like the rules booklets, the adventure books are well designed, they're easy to understand, they're scaffolded to help new game masters, and they're nicely illustrated. Production-wise, no notes. There are 5 in-world handouts. If you've seen a Beetle & Grimm's Platinum Edition box, it's kind of like that, though instead of being printed on different kinds of paper stock, these are all on regular glossy paper stock. That's just made to look a little bit different from handout to handout. The handouts are mostly all menus of one kind or another, plus a letter of thanks for the end of the adventure, so your players aren't really going to be poring over the handouts looking for clues or solving puzzles, which I think is a little bit of a shame. For those of you who were upset like I was that the Starfinder box set that we reviewed up there in the video in the corner didn't come with maps for all the encounters, this set should make you happy. We have 9 full-sized, double-sided maps here, covering I think every mapped adventure or encounter in this set. 5 of them are 22 by 30 inches, which is pretty big, and 4 of them are half that size at 22 by 15 inches. Nice paper stock, but not laminated, so you can't draw on them with wet or dry erase markers. And they're all fairly generic in the best way possible, so you can totally reuse these in all sorts of future adventures. You get a battle map of each of the 11 caves in the Caves of Chaos, plus an overhead ungridded view of the entire cave complex. We also have ungridded maps of the Keep with major locations marked and labeled, and one of the Wilderness with each of its 4 major explorable areas labeled, and each of those areas gets its own battle map. I tell you, if you like battle maps, these are really great. Super usable and really nicely drawn, really stellar work here. In lieu of regular character sheets, you get these player mats, which are on heavier cardstock. They have everything you need to play your character on the board, and there's room to place cards, which have your spell and equipment information. So if you want to play a cleric, grab the level 1 cleric board, then get the components listed in the bottom left corner, namely the chain shirt and the mace cards, and the listed spell cards, plus 60 gold piece tokens. Yes, we have cardboard tokens for gold in this game, 1, 5, and 25 gold per token to be exact. No silver or copper here. They are printed on both sides. Seeing this kind of makes me realize how many thousands of gold my current adventuring party has in my Patreon game at the moment. They also have their own bar and keep, and they each have a home in Neverwinter as well. Rich bastards, but they have been playing that game for quite a few years now. Anyway, then you just assemble everything on your board, and you're almost ready to go. Note that the character board does a few things for you to keep things simple, like instead of having to choose your fighter's fighting style feat, the archery one is just chosen for you and baked right into the stats. You'll also note there's no ability scores here, just the modifiers, as that's what you really need when you're playing. So when you do transition into playing with regular D&D rules, there are going to be a few wrinkles for you and your players to learn. Of course, you aren't building your own character here, at least not if you want to use all the built-in supplies to the box, but you do get to choose between 2 subclasses at level 3. Each class has 2 double-sided boards, level 1 and level 2 on one board, and the 2 subclasses of level 3 on the other board. Cleric chooses between the life and light domains, Rogue gets Assassin and Thief, Fighter gets Eldritch Knight and Champion, and Wizard gets Abjurer and, of course, Evoker. With a lot of information baked into the game boards, it may not be clear to players how all the numbers and abilities were determined. Things like proficiency bonus aren't really mentioned here, so there will be a learning curve when you transition to playing regular D&D. And it will take some work and some know-how to transition to a regular character sheet if you want to continue playing these characters. The one thing the box doesn't help with is coming up with an actual character, though, with a personality, a history, and a tie into the story. That's pretty much up to you, and we'll talk again more about that later. The game does give you race and background cards, though. For your races, you can choose from only Dwarf, Elf, Halfling, and Human. There are 2 cards for each race if someone wants to double up. The race cards give you the gameplay information you need to play, but no real lore. We get 8 background cards: Acolyte, Criminal, Entertainer, Farmer, Guide, Hermit, Sage, and Soldier. Each card gives you the gameplay mechanics that you need for that background. And then we have cards for equipment and magic items and spells, which all look like this. The art on the equipment and the magic item cards is really good, though I am a little bit disappointed in the art on the spell cards, which theoretically could have been really fun and interesting. Instead, they decided to go with basically icons, except for spells that have an area of effect, for which they give you a pretty helpful little diagram. I mean, you know I'm on record really enjoying reference cards. One reason Hit Point Press decided to support us at the Gallant Goblins is because I was one of the original backers of their original reference card Kickstarter way back in the day and made a very early review of that. It's in a video that you can't find up there in the corner because I am shy about my older videos, but you can go find it if you want to search for it. So I really like having these cards for spells and equipment. One, it's fun to get physical cards when you get new items or learn new spells. It gives you something to hold on to and look at, and it has the stats you need, and it has pictures to help you visualize what you have. And then they're helpful for keeping track of things like spells, which ones you're concentrating on, and I just love all these cards. It's so much fun. You also get nice cards for the NPCs with really nice pictures and important info on the back for the GM. These are the kind of cards that you can clip to the top of your GM screen so you can have access to the information where your players can see who they're talking to. Spoiler alert, I am going to give this set a little grief later on for not really giving the game master or the players much assistance with actual role-playing or character building, but the NPC cards here are the exception to this. You get nice bits of personality and some quirks to hopefully help the game master breathe a little life into the NPCs, and each one has some rumors that they can pass along too. Not all of them are true. Finally, we have our monster cards, which are really great. You can see them here. These are fantastic. The fronts of the cards have really gorgeous art, the name of the creature, and like a tagline for each monster. Lizardfolk Warden, for example, says Reptilian Guardian of Nature. And then in the corner, it shows you the corresponding token to use on your board. The back has the stat blocks, of course, and a bit of lore to help you understand how that creature fits into the world, so good stuff there. Again, you could clip these to the top of your screen to show off the artwork while you have access to all the stats. Some folks might hesitate a little bit with showing the fronts of the cards because it does give away what the monster is, and that tagline can give away a little tiny bit of information, but I think it's completely fine. The taglines aren't giving away anything that you can't tell just by looking at the creature. These are some of my favorite monster cards out there, really, and I would love to see more of them if you're listening to me, Wizards of the Coast. Make more of these. You also get 4 little player reference cards with actions and what the players can do on their turn. Again, really helpful. Most new players that I've played with freeze a little bit when it gets to their first turn, and they ask a game master, like, what can I do? And most game masters respond with something like, you can do anything you want. This is D&D, just tell me. And that's kind of not helpful in the moment, and this card fixes those little problems, I think. Next, we have the combat tracking pad, which is pretty nice. You can write down the combatants in initiative order and track their HP and death saves and conditions. I think it would have been a little bit helpful if you had a little bit more space for the hit points, as you're likely going to be scribbling out one number and writing in a new one pretty often during combat. As it is, you probably need to use a pencil with a good eraser instead of a pen for this. There are about 50 pages here on the pad, which should be more than enough to get you all the way through the starter set. And you get 1 set of dice, so do plan to bring some more to your table. The dice themselves are pretty nice, though. Slightly translucent and marbled resin dice with very easy to read numbering. There are 11 dice, including a D10 and a D percentile, and 4 D6s and 2 D20s, which is pretty great too. I dig the dice. 2 little things I like in this set. It comes with a plastic insert to keep everything nicely organized in the box. Our board game fans are really going to appreciate that. And there's also little extra baggies to keep all your tokens in. Speaking of the tokens, here you can see the monster tokens, which come with that same great art. The art is the same on each side, but one side also has letters to help you differentiate which creature is which when you have more than one of the same monster on the battle map at once. The player characters get standees instead of tokens, which is pretty nice. You can see them here. Then there is a series of environmental terrain like pits and webbing and traps and bones and spell effects and chests that you can drop down onto your battle maps. Finally, you get tokens to track your hit points and your spell slots, which use those little power tokens for your spell slots. And then there are gem tokens, which you'll also use in the adventure. I think you might want to make the gold tokens and the hit point tokens optional in your game, because tracking that with a pencil and paper might be a little less fiddly and susceptible to catastrophe if your new kitten runs across the gaming table at an opportune moment, but that's up to you. The one thing that I'm a little bit surprised about is they didn't include a GM screen. It's not strictly necessary to have a GM screen, but it's kind of an iconic part of playing D&D. What could have been interesting is if they had a GM screen with a place to insert the monster and NPC cards for everyone to see, but I'm sure that would have added to the cost and the weight of the box, so maybe it's a fair trade-off. Another great feature of the booklets is that they show you exactly how to set up each battle map, with exactly the tokens you need and where to place them. It even reminds you which NPC and monster cards that you need for each encounter. You can tell the set was designed holistically, as every part fits nicely in together. Finally, you get a quick start guide to help you get started on your adventure. There's also a QR code on there to take you to some videos to help you get started and learn to play Rodney Smith style. It makes me think of that great video where Deborah Ann Wall teaches John Bernthal what D&D is and how to play. Go check out that video if you haven't seen it. I'll link it down below. And that also reminds me, there are so many different ways to teach D&D. I brought people to my table with nothing but dice, sometimes even just a dice rolling app on their phone, and taught them in theater of the mind, bare bones style, like Deborah Ann Wall does with John Bernthal in that video. It's a great way to take something that seems so complex on the surface and make it really approachable. I think that method of teaching works well with a confident and well-spoken DM, and with players who aren't gamers in the slightest, because boxes like this, with all these cards and tokens and maps, can still be overwhelming, even when it's super well designed and scaffolded like this set is. This box, on the other hand, I think is great for people who have played a lot of board games or computer role-playing games like Baldur's Gate or WoW. They'll probably be delighted with all the cards and tokens. Now, I haven't even talked about the adventure booklets yet, because that's where I start running into some issues. The box organizes the adventure material into 3 separate booklets rather than one lengthy narrative. Each booklet is self-contained and oriented around a distinct mode of play. For example, exploration in the wilderness, social and settlement encounters in the keep, and dungeon delving in the caves, which offers groups flexibility in choosing which dimension of play they want to engage with at any given session. Importantly, the modular design also means that different players can act as a game master across sessions. Each booklet can be handed to a different GM without requiring everyone to follow a single overarching plot thread or master every detail of every region. I'll admit, I have never played like that before. If you have, let me know down below, because I find that really interesting. This set is a deliberate nod to the classic 1979 module, The Keep on the Borderlands by Gary Gygax, updating its Frontier Outpost plus cave system sandbox for modern audiences while retaining the open-ended invitation to roam and explore. The Keep on the Borderlands book introduces the safe harbor for the players, where they can enjoy the social pillar of D&D. Each location has at least one NPC and a quest. The PCs might find themselves tracking down escaped goats, stress testing locks boxes, and investigating some ghost sightings. It's all well done enough. One of my critiques, though, is that the writing, it just lacks an edge and personality. It's all pretty vanilla and might not feel particularly organic. Each location is pretty much a self-contained place, so the party will just go to each location, do the quest, wash and repeat. It definitely does a good job of showcasing all the sorts of things that you might do as an adventurer, but the Keep itself doesn't really have a personality outside of generic fantasy Keep. When the players are ready to get their hands dirty, they might want to head out into the wilderness, which brings us to the next book. You place the map on the table and read the box text, which says, "Your adventuring party enters the wilderness. Mysteries await you in this untamed land. Where do you want to go?" So, very open-ended, but again, really kind of vanilla. The party as written doesn't really have much motivation to go risk their lives out in the wilderness, except that they probably want to play the game. So the players can explore 4 different regions on the map. The Trail, which has bandits. The Woods has fae and cultists. The Fens is the home of the lizard folk. And the Tamarack Stand, a hilly region full of spiders. When the characters enter a region or explore it, you roll a d4 and you get an encounter. The Tamarack Stand, for example, they might find or encounter a quickly developing fire, which requires some ability checks, a giant spider's nest, which has a combat encounter, which uses one of the included maps, a hobgoblin patrol, which can be avoided or fought, and a challenge where the characters get hungry and have to determine which kind of pine seeds are the best treat. I don't know, there just wasn't a lot here that was particularly innovative or interesting for me, but I'm the kind of DM who generally skips random encounters that don't progress the plot or character development in some way, and this was basically a book of 16 random encounters, plus at the end you had 24 extra small encounters that you could add in if you aren't tired yet. If you enjoyed the heck out of random encounters, then this book has you covered. And finally we have the Caves of Chaos. Though this is really structured chaos. It is 11 caves that can be tackled in any order, though Cave A is designed to be a tutorial. Each one is a mini dungeon designed to be completed in 60 to 90 minutes. They're all basically distinct from one another, though there is a little bit of intermingling between a few of the caves. The caves focus on kobolds, mephits, nothics, goblins, ogres, hobgoblins, bugbears, minotaurs, gnolls, owlbears, and occult, in roughly that order, though there are other creatures involved too. I was a bit worried that this would boil down to the heroes walking into the home of various monsters and murdering them, but it actually ended up being my favorite book in the set. Each cave has a little story to tell, yay story, and the players have some options on how they want to handle each one. A lot of them offer opportunities to avoid combat altogether if that's how they roll. There's some pretty fun little things here, from goblins throwing a birthday party for their boss, to a depressed ogre with his pet red dragon wormling. They're not all bangers, but there's enough here to sink your teeth into that I think you're going to have a lot of fun. Again, while the booklets give you nicely detailed locations and encounters, they don't really give you a big story arc, or any kind of story arc. It gives the players lots of agency because the narrative is going to come from their choices. But for new players, that can be a big challenge. You run the risk of the players playing basically themselves rather than embodying a character who has their own background and perspective and motivations. There are so many ways to play D&D, and they are all valid. I have friends who have played entire official 5e campaigns while doing absolutely no role-playing, and I don't know how many people subscribe to the way I like to play. I like story, and I like characters. I want all the characters in my game to be grounded in the setting, to have connections with the story and the setting and with each other, to have motivations that push them forward, and who have personal flaws that might be dangerous to them as any monster. Those are the qualities that make a memorable adventure to me, plus of course having those tough choices to make. And for me, that is the hardest part about being a game master and being a player in D&D. Developing those storytelling skills, those improv skills, and those character building skills isn't easy for most people. This set does a fantastic job of helping the group learn the gameplay mechanics in a structured, scaffolded way. I have no doubt that when your group finishes this adventure in this set, they will know functionally how to play D&D more or less. But this box does next to nothing to help you build those storytelling skills. The original 5e box that I love so much, The Lost Mine of Phandelver, came with 2 important things that this box lacks. First, it had that set narrative. There was a story to uncover, there were villains and factions and an unfolding mystery. And second, you had pre-generated characters that had, albeit brief, but pretty full backstories that were directly tied to the campaign and to existing NPCs in the story. These characters started off with prescribed motivations to push forward with the story. And even if you wanted to create a character of your own, you could use those backgrounds on those sheets as a template to develop your own backstory. This set drops you in with fancy character sheets and beautiful cards detailing your stats and your equipment and spells, but there's no meat under that beautiful skin unless you and your players build it independently. And some folks are naturally gifted at breathing life into characters, but most of us need a little bit of help getting started. I talked to a few old school D&D players, and they thought that the way the adventure was presented here was just fine. This set does a good job of harkening back to the early days of how D&D was played, where the story really did develop organically as you continued your adventures. Again, if that's your style, this set might be a great way to help bring some friends and family members over to D&D from board games. And it is good at that. Maybe things like Critical Role contributed to the larger focus on story and characters in the community these days, because I think it has shifted to some degree over time toward a more story and character based game. And I'm certainly painting with a broad brush here, because there were absolutely narratively strong adventures in the early days too, and there are still lots of sandboxy and narrative light modules today. I remember Ron Lundeen, the great adventure writer and the second most frequent guest here at the Gallant Goblin, talking to me about how he likes to write adventures that are skeletons, and it's up to players to put the narrative flesh on those bones. And that's kind of what we have here, just with a rather disjointed and unconnected skeleton maybe. If I were to personally run this set, I would feel compelled to do a couple of things. I would make a narrative of some sort to tie together the action. I would make a little setting guide for the players that talks about the keep and the surrounding areas and the people who live there, so they can make characters that have a place in that setting. And once my players know who they want to be, I would want to tie them into the story. Let's say our fighter wanted to start life as a blacksmith working in the keep. Maybe I would make them a ward of Callista, the blacksmith in the box, who has decided to stop selling arms to outsiders because they inevitably fall victim to the brigands in the area who take those weapons and turn them back against the keep. That's one of the little adventures in here, one of the little encounters. Maybe the fighter character shares her distrust for outsiders, but through story circumstances has to rely on the new adventuring party for a brief amount of time to accomplish some sort of goal for the keep, and in that time may come to slowly change their mind about outsiders. And I'd probably completely rework the Wilderness book to make it more than a series of random encounters. I might try to pull at threads there to make a story based on what my PCs want to do. I've had a pretty consistent critique of 5e products that they don't give the game masters enough assistance in creating player hooks or lore. Pathfinder has free player guides for each adventure path that tell the players all about the setting of the adventure, the background for the region, which races and classes would be best fits for the story, and give possible story hooks to tie yourself into the setting. It's one of the best things that Paizo does, and I do not understand why D&D doesn't do that. This box set takes things to that natural conclusion. It is gorgeous, it's well produced, it is very user-friendly, and it's a great way to teach people how to play the game, but it kind of lacks that heart and passion of storytelling. That's what really gets folks hooked into games like D&D. If you have a group of friends who are creative and gifted at storytelling already, I think this set is going to be great for you. But if you have friends who don't exercise those creative muscles very often, I'm afraid the stilted writing and lack of narrative are really going to cause people to maybe lose focus or lose interest after several sessions doing random, unconnected quests. It's tough to review starter sets when you're already so immersed in the game. I can't look at the box with the fresh eyes of a newbie. But from my vaguely jaded perspective, I'm sad to see D&D moving more and more in a direction of supporting and teaching mechanics over storytelling. I want this box to have a narrative, and I want an extra booklet that teaches storytelling for GMs and players, and I want a setting guide and pre-generated characters for the players. With those things, I think this would be a perfect box. But hopefully I've given you enough information to know if this is the right set for you and your group. It looks like that original 5e starter set that I love so much might be out of print now. So if you want to pick that one up, and maybe I'm biased, but I still think that's the one I recommend, you'll probably either have to get it secondhand or you get it through D&D Beyond as part of the Phandelver and Below set. And that wasn't my favorite adventure either. That was the follow-up to the original starter set. The starter set I still really like. It is also available on Roll20 and probably some other digital marketplaces, so you can still get it, just not in that kind of original set unless you get it on eBay. But just to be clear, everything else in the set is fantastic. The maps, the cards, the character boards, all of it. I personally just think that you'll have to bring more to the table as a game master than you did in those previous starter sets to really engage your players. But Dungeons & Dragons Starter Set Heroes of the Borderlands is available now. You can get the physical box set for between $44 and $50, which isn't bad given all that's included. The digital version on D&D Beyond is $15, though it's all the physical cards and maps and whatnot that makes this box special. This is made for in-person play, in my opinion. And they offer a bundle for both for $55. I'm really curious to hear what you think about it in the comment section down below. Don't hold back. Maybe my opinion is way out of touch with the fan base, so let me know. And go check out the Hit Point Press Black Friday sale for some really cool discounts. If you're looking at box sets for your next adventure, you can also consider that Humblewood starter set, which I really adored. It's $30 off for the month. Use my link in the corner or down below to check it out. And remember our free 5e magic items and monsters over at bonfirebites.com. They were all developed by two-time Emmy winner Grady Wong, and I helped a tiny little bit too. For now, though, please stay safe, have fun, love each other, and I will see you next time at the Gallant Goblin.